All right. Hey there, everybody. We're going to be talking about acupuncture, reflexology, a bunch of things tonight. Again, I'm Dr. Chris Knutson, classical naturopath, and we'll be covering quite a few things, but focusing on, like I say, reflexology, acupuncture, and a handful of things along that vein, focusing mostly on what one would consider energy work, but that's a very bad way of explaining it, and I'll explain why that's a bad way of explaining it as we go along. So for those of you that are familiar with acupuncture reflexology, you'll have a good basis, and you'll find what I'm saying, a lot of it will probably sound like an oversimplification, but for those that are new to it, this will be a good kind of introduction to the ideas behind reflexology and acupuncture. Now, we'll start with reflexology because that's a little simpler to grasp, based on Western concepts of anatomy and physiology. So to start with, in the body, we've got nerves everywhere, obviously. The brain is our kind of central processor. Spinal column connects everything, with the gut, with the internal organs, the muscles, the nerves, it's, the ligaments, tendons, bones, everything. Pretty simple, pretty basic. However, where reflexology does its work is on the hands and feet. And people say, well, a reflexologist, so you've got a gut issue, go to a reflexologist. They'll rub your hands and feet and make you feel better. Most people look at that and go, how on earth does that even make sense? How does rubbing my feet make my gut function better? Well, here's kind of how the things break down. In your hands and feet, you actually have nerve endings. That's where most of your good sensory, the sensitivity that you get in the hands and feet comes from the nerve endings that travel from those areas on the hands and feet up through the arms, but they don't go straight from the arms to the brain or from the feet to the brain. They actually come, say, from the hands. They come from the arms up, down through various internal organs, and then back to the spinal column and up to the brain. So it's actually an out-of-the-way path that the nerves take. People say, okay, this is a little bit odd. Why don't the nerves just make direct shots? Well, here's why. The human body is designed for tactile stimulation. We're designed to be using our hands and feet. We're designed to be walking barefoot. We're designed to be building things, doing things with our hands. Us that just sit at computers all day, not really getting a lot of that stimulation. Well, here's how reflexology comes into play with that. On the hands and feet, there are, like I say, nerve endings that connect with every organ in the body on their way to the brain. What has been found is that certain areas, certain groupings, I should say, of nerve endings, nerve bundles, you could almost describe it as nerve bundles, collections of nerves that collectively go through various organs on their way to the brain, which has actually allowed people over the last several hundred years especially to map out the hand and the sole of the foot and show exactly where those nerve endings run, showing exactly where those nerve endings travel on the way from the soles of the feet through the organs to the body. How they did this is by paying attention to, okay, we stimulate this part of the body and that organ in the body starts acting a little bit better, starts functioning a little bit different. We stimulate this part, and this part of the body starts acting a little different. Well, over many, many centuries of trial and error, they were able to actually map out on the hands and on the soles of the feet exactly what areas corresponds to what organs in the body. And so by doing that, they were able to say, okay, well, say a person has a liver issue. All right, well, the reflexologist is going to take, and they're going to stimulate through massage, whether it's using the hands, using various tools, etc., to stimulate the nerve endings associated with the liver that pass through the liver on the hands and the feet in order to stimulate that organ. So basically, it's a kind of a simplistic system. If you really think about it, all you're really doing with reflexology is looking at an organ, saying, okay, this organ is malfunctioning. We're going to stimulate the nerves that correspond, that pass through that organ, thereby sending that direct stimulus through that organ on its way to the brain. So essentially what you're feeling when you're rubbing that piece of your palm or your foot or whatever, that sensation is traveling directly through the corresponding organ, giving it a little bit of stimulation. Kind of interesting. Now, broadening this out, most reflexologists, when you go to them, the really good ones, will kind of do what you might consider a medical history on you. They'll want to know what your issues are, what your history is, et cetera, because they'll want to know which areas they should be focusing on more. Others you'll go to, they'll just give you a whole body treatment essentially by rubbing and it's not just rubbing. Rubbing is an oversimplification as well. It's actually specific acupressure techniques that are designed specifically to stimulate those areas. You get lots of motions where a person, it feels like they're doing little circles or pressure, specific hard pressures in certain areas to stimulate those organs in different ways. And believe me, talk to a reflexologist, they'll give you more details on how that all works. A lot of them you'll go to, and like I said, they'll do the whole hand, the whole foot, kind of give the whole body a good stimulation. Doing that on a regular basis gives your whole body good stimulation on a regular basis. Well, it's the same concept as when people are talking about, oh, well, if you want to be healthy, go walk outside barefoot, every day. Well, there's two things that happen there. One, especially if you've got lumpier soil or rougher grass, gravel, whatever, you're getting a lot of that same kind of tactile stimulation on the soles of the feet. Great, that's giving the full response like you would get from the reflexology, all of those nerve endings being stimulated and passing all of that information through those organs. Really beneficial. Also, you're basically grounding yourself out on the earth itself. The earth is a magnet. We live on a giant magnet. And the human body runs on a very similar bioelectric system to the planet. We basically run on the same wavelength, essentially. When we're living in concrete boxes surrounded by electrical machinery all day long, that's messing with our nervous system, the electricity of our nervous system, it can throw our bioelectric system a little bit out of whack. And that's why they say, oh, earthing, grounding, et cetera, it's so good. People make it into this mystical mumbo jumbo. Well, it's just like grounding out a wire. That's basically what it comes down to. Is it's like grounding out a wire or a capacitor. Think of if you know anything about electronics, a capacitor that's gotten a wacky charge, you'll ground it out. You'll remove that charge. Well, it's the same way. By walking barefoot in the grass, all of those nerve endings in the nervous system are connected to the primary magnet that we live on, and any strange anomalies in the bioelectric circuitry in your body help get equalized, essentially. Again, it's kind of a simplification, but it gives a really nice idea of kind of, okay, what are these things all about? Now, from there, we can kind of build in the idea of acupuncture. Okay, what is acupuncture? Well, kind of like reflexology, that's stimulating through pressure and touch. Acupressure is a little more specific, different parts of the body. And then you have acupuncture, where they're not only, touching and poking and prodding, they're also sticking needles in you. Well, don't be afraid of the needles. A good acupuncturist, you actually don't feel it. The reason being that the needles themselves are so thin and so fine, and they barely, when they put them in, they barely penetrate the skin enough to actually even just stimulate the nerves ever so slightly. And so most people, when they're in with an acupuncturist, they feel a little pressure where the needle is going, but they don't feel pain. And so don't be afraid of needles. Definitely don't be afraid of the needles. With acupuncture, you're kind of broadening the idea of reflexology, acupressure, using those points on the body rather than just the hands and the feet. You've got nerve endings on the hand and the feet that are nicely grouped, and so they're easy to work with. The whole body is set up like that in reality. The entire body is set up with nerve channels, passages, and what they call chi channels or meridians. Now, chi in the West, people consider this a very nebulous concept, but it's not. People think of it as this mystical energy of the universe, this cosmic energy. And if you really break down all of the Chinese medical texts describing it, how it works, what it functions, where it runs in the body, its pathways, et cetera, it is actually a description. It was an ancient description because they were trying to describe things with the terminology of their day and not the terminology of our day. Essentially what it is it's a conglomerate of the bioelectric energy in your body, of the metabolic energy in your body, the thermal energy in your body. Put all of these things together, all of these different energy currencies, the adenosine triphosphate, the ATP produced in the mitochondria of the different cells, how that's exchanged between different parts and organs of the body, et cetera, et cetera. The movement of qi through the body along meridians, as they're called, these invisible channels in the body that Chinese medicine talks about, these are not just imaginary channels. They're not tubes. They're not physical pipes. They're not anything like that. What they are is it's basically a map that shows you where these biological forms of energy flow through the body, the pathway that they take, which organ affects which organ in what order. That's what they mapped out for us. And so by looking at that, a acupuncturist, especially a really good one, I know an amazing acupuncturist, she studied for 12 years at Shandong University in China, 12 years just to be able to do this. That's how dedicated they are to getting the accuracy of this. Basically, they can look at your system, say, okay, this organ is functioning fast, this organ is functioning fast, but this organ is functioning slow. Why is that? Well, if you look at the way they map out the energy flow, the energy current in the body, again, a conglomeration of bioelectric, thermic, metabolic, etc., you can start seeing, okay, this organ feeds energy to this organ, which feeds energy to this organ, which feeds energy to this organ. Essentially, you've got a chain through the entire body that works in a complete loop. So every organ is receiving nutrients, nourishment, sustenance, bioelectric energy, etc., from another organ up the line and passing it, what it produces and what it processes, to an organ down the line. And so you start seeing this circuit in the body between all the different organs. And interestingly enough, that circuit that's described as the meridians, basically connecting organ to organ to organ, can be verified when you actually look at which organ affects which organ. Modern anatomy and physiology backs it up. These organs do affect each other in that specific order. So when an acupuncturist looks at a person and says, these two organs are running high, but the one below them is running low. Why is that? Well, the way they break it down, they say that the qi in the lower organ is blocked and it's creating an accumulation in the organs above it. Well, you can think of it this way. What's actually happening is one organ is underfunctioning, which is forcing other organs that depend on it to overfunction to make up the difference. An example is the kidneys and the heart. Now, in the meridian flow, these aren't directly in line with each other, but it'll give you an idea from anatomy and physiology perspective. And in Chinese medicine, you always see an inverse relationship with the kidney and the heart. When the kidney is running too low, the heart's running too high. When the kidneys are too high, the heart's too low. Well, here's why. With the basis of modern Western anatomy and physiology, here's what's going on. The kidneys clean your blood, right? Simple. Okay, they clean out all the toxins, all the wastes, all the metabolic debris, etc. That's what they're supposed to do, keep the blood clean. Well, if the kidneys start underfunctioning, it means that they're not cleaning the blood to the proper degree, which means you're starting to have an accumulation of various toxins, metals, salts, contaminants, etc., that are building up in the blood to levels higher than they should be because they're not being removed at the proper rate. Well, what happens when that happens? When the blood gets contaminated, or the excess sodium, excess potassium, excess, etc., in the blood starts accumulating, the heart has to work harder in order to make up the difference. Pretty simple. The heart has to work harder because it's working with a contaminated material. It's not functioning right because it has to work in a toxic environment. Now, what if the kidney is overfunctioning? What if the kidneys are stripping too much out of the blood and cleaning too many of those biosalts, too many of those nutrients out of the blood and flushing away too much? Well, then the heart underfunctions. How does that work? The kidney's overfunctioning, now the heart's underfunctioning. Well, here's how it works. If the kidneys are stripping too much, now the heart can't function because it's undernourished, it's understimulated. It doesn't have the materials properly to function at a healthy, strong capacity. And so when the kidneys are underfunctioning, the heart overfunctions. When the kidneys are overfunctioning, the heart underfunctions. Now, that's a simple, basic breakdown of just two organs in the body. If you look at the Chinese medical system, you look at the meridian flow charts, it breaks down the organs into 12, a group of 12. Now, every one affecting the one below it, and vice versa, all the way around, basically in a circle. All of these organs have similar relationships to each other. So when an acupuncturist says, there's a blockage in your kidney chi, and that's affecting your heart, or that's affecting your small intestine or your stomach, et cetera, depending on what's going on in the body. Your kidney chi is low. Your kidney chi is blocked, and that's causing these issues elsewhere in the body. We need to release that kidney chi. What they're talking about is that organ is underfunctioning or malfunctioning in some way that's causing issues either in the upline or the downline of the energy currency in that body. And so a lot of the mysticism that people associate with traditional Chinese medicine and whatnot starts fading away once you start applying basic anatomy and physiology to the concepts. Now, what's great about that, and it's not that a person's trying to, steal their thunder or make them seem like they're less than they are. No, in fact, in my opinion, that makes it much more fascinating, because now these ancient concepts that people used to believe were just nebulous, mystical mumbo jumbo, it can be verified. And now we can look at that verification. We can look at that verified information and say, oh, wait, we can use this to further our own understanding now of the energy currency in the body. So acupuncture, the way it works, they look at this, and there are many, many acupuncture points in the body, thousands of them, that specifically target nerve and tissue junctures that stimulate different organs in different ways to either encourage the flow of this energy currency, we'll call it, this conglomerate of energy sources, or reduce it, depending on if it's flowing too fast. So as you put these things together, bit by bit by bit, you can start seeing, oh, look at that, acupuncture, that's a thing, that makes sense, that actually works. Because just like reflexology, stimulating specific nerve groupings in the hands and feet to stimulate the organs in their direct nerve train, acupuncture is stimulating specific juncture points throughout the entire body, front, back, legs, neck, head, face, ears, whatever, to stimulate organs in the same way, to either stimulate them to upregulate or downregulate their function, depending on what's going on in the body. I've known many, many people who have gone to acupuncturists and gotten great benefits because the acupuncturists can look at this and they can see that progression. Now, the terminology is vastly different. That's the main issue that we have today between Eastern and Western medicine. Basically, it comes down, I'll explain it this way. I had a philosophy teacher once said, if you want to win a debate, clarify the terms right out the gate. Well, that's where we have failed. Just as a culture in general, we've failed to clarify the terms. And so by failing to clarify the terms, people say, oh, well, I'm going to an acupuncturist and they're fixing my chi. And people go, what are you talking about? Your chi? What is your chi? Well, they haven't clarified the terms. Clarify the terms, and all of a sudden people realize, oh, they're helping upregulate your kidney chi so that your heart functions better. Cool. They're basically upregulating the function of the transference of energy, the function of the organ, the transference of nerve energy, thermal energy, biochemic energy, metabolic energy, etc. Again, that whole conglomerate in that organ. So again, it demystifies so much of what we're looking at here. So if you get a chance, go to an acupuncturist, talk to them, find out, what they're about. Get the ideas from them, start thinking about this, start looking at it. I always tell people, especially when I'm talking to, people in the modern Western medical field, you have to clarify the terms, because that's where we all get lost. And, there's a lot that we can learn by looking at these old methods of doing things, these old bioenergetic principles, because we can verify them now. And we're starting to figure out what these things are. Now, I would say if anyone's trying to, fix their health in one way or another, there's a million ways. There's an old saying where I come from, there's many roads to Baldwin. It's basically saying that every road leads to Rome. That's essentially what it means. There's many roads to Baldwin. It means there's many, many modalities out there that can lead to health and healing, and they should be explored. They should be looked into. The one thing I would caution you against, just as a finisher on this whole thing, it's slightly an aside, but I'll give it to you anyways, don't just Google it. Google is your enemy when it comes to good information. I know in this information age, everyone seems to say the contrary. Oh, you can find anything on the internet. You can learn anything on YouTube. Yes, and with great personal risk, because you never know the validity of what you're actually reading, seeing, watching, etc. You're just taking them at face value. If a person wants to explore various healing modalities, whether it's reflexology, acupuncture, bioenergetics, whatever, talk to someone in the field, someone who knows it, someone who has studied it. Don't just go to Google and say, oh, well, I shouldn't do this because it says XYZ. No, no, no. Go to someone who knows it, who has studied it and has expertise in that area. And when you start your conversation with them, clarify the terms. When they say, well, we're going to fix your kidney chi, say, can you define chi? That's a reasonable question. Can you define bioenergetics? Can you define reflexology? How does these things work? And it's not an insulting thing if you're tactful. Some people get their feathers ruffled when you question their methods, which is sad. But definitely ask to clarify the terms. Find out what it's all about, how it all works. Because by doing that, you will be able to make better choices, make better and more informed decisions about your health, and prevent making mistakes based on some random thing you read on Google. So I always tell people, when you're looking for health, you're looking for healing, you're looking for whatever, and you're trying to find answers, Google is your enemy. Because it's not going to help you. The best thing, again, talk to somebody who knows, somebody who has expertise in the area. Now, that's kind of a tangent from where we started with reflexology and acupuncture, but I think it kind of came full circle there for you. So I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope to see you all again next time. Thank you all for listening in. You all have a wonderful night.